Welcome to Talent Talks, quickfire questions to get to know leaders in recruitment. I'm Tom, the CEO at Pinpoint, and today I'm joined by Oli Monks, TA and Mobility Lead at MadeTech. MadeTech help organizations make a positive impact through technology via a bunch of digital transformation services and products. They're also a brilliant customer of Pinpoint, and we're very grateful for their business. Oli's got a super interesting background across HR, TA, and tech, and so super excited to chat today. Oli, thanks so much. Are you ready for some questions?
Cheers, Tom. Yeah, very happy to be here. Bring it on.
Sweet, cool. Let's dive in. So look, the first question we ask the same thing of every person we speak to here. If you weren't in recruitment, what would you be doing?
Yeah, love this question. If I can give two answers, a bit of a cop-out, I think I would do it.
Do it, yeah.
I definitely think I'm going to end up setting up my own business again. I've done it before recruitment, I'll do it afterwards. So I think definitely something around the entrepreneurship space, I will be there. If not that, I love photography. So do a lot of documentary photography, portrait photography. So some combination of those would definitely be, or will be, kind of future beyond recruitment whenever that comes.
Cool. What do you shoot on?
Or all different types, to be fair, all different types of equipment at the moment, depending on the kind of scenario, if you like. But I do a lot of kind of environmental portraits, capturing people in their homes, and doing a whole project at the moment that's around siblings. And so it's a big thing for me. I've got an autistic brother, and so it's capturing sibling relationships where at least one sibling is disabled as well, and like what those relationships are like.
Nice. Is any of that stuff online, or will it be online at some point?
It will be, so I can drop links anywhere.
Dude, yeah, we would chuck that. We will chuck that in the show notes. That's awesome. That's really cool. I, for my sins, am one of those all the gear and no idea people. I bought a Leica M11 without realizing it was a manual focus when I was on holiday, and I'm utterly incompetent. And so I'm very jealous of your skills. And yeah, look forward to taking a look at some of the stuff you've been shooting.
With pleasure. Sounds great.
Great. Cool. Look, we alluded a little bit to MadeTech and your role in the wider picture of that, but give us a 60-second summary of what you're doing there.
Yeah, we're a really mission-driven organization that you mentioned there as well. And all of our focus really is working within public sector organizations. So whether that's the services and products that they put together for citizens like us on that front line, or really supporting the civil service and actually the systems that they use to provide a really great experience for anyone that is in the UK and beyond in the future, who knows. We go in and we support with lots of different, we would call them clients, but organizations in the public sector, whether it's our main central government departments, whether it's different local government councils or agencies, different parts of the NHS. We work with a real wide range and growing range and do some really impactful work. So it makes my life a lot easier when I'm talking to candidates about the reasons why they should join or why they should stay at MadeTech. Deliver lots of different impactful stuff, whether it's around the Met Office, whether it's around NHS. Did some amazing things, especially during the pandemic era, or even with the Homes for Ukraine, for example. Our team spanned that up in about 2 or 3 weeks to allow people to put themselves forward. So yeah, really impactful place to work, supporting whether it's civil service teams or citizens like ourselves.
I love that. And that you touched on a bunch of things there. You gave some real examples of the work you do. And equally, you talked about, and you said it right at the beginning, this kind of mission-driven organization, which I think in some ways makes life, without being a cop-out, slightly easier on the sort of EVP, attraction, candidate piece. What are you doing to amplify that message, though? Like, how do you get MadeTech out and in front of the right types of candidates from a candidate attraction perspective?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're definitely finding more so than ever, there are key things that candidates are always going to be interested in. What's the EVP, like you mentioned, whether it's the salary, what are the other kind of benefits, whether it's remote, hybrid. But we know always, and more so now, that being part of an organization that is doing impactful work or having a contribution in some way positively to the world that we live in means more for people these days. And so some of the ways that we do that, first of all, is in the stories that we tell. So we work really hard, not only in people's kind of experience here and the work that they do, but actually the output for us. I think a big appeal that we have with candidates is that not only are they working on, where it's a user research, for example, at the beginning of a new service or design, really understanding that user's kind of pain points through the journey, but in 3 months, 6 months, a year or plus time, they can actually see the output of their work as well. And so people really get to see the end-to-end impact of what they've contributed towards and the positive impact that can have as well.
Makes total sense. And to be honest, we do very different things, obviously, but I think getting to see the impact of the stuff that you're doing is such an incredible draw, right? I think in many organizations, you're so detached from the end product. It's such a core thing. And I feel like organizations like ours often are guilty of not milking that enough. And so love that you're managing to do that. Once you've got the candidates interested and engaged and you're assessing those folks and taking them through a process, what's your personal favorite interview question to ask candidates and why?
This is a good question. I should have one to hand already. I can certainly think of the ones I've been asked, which is where people turn it around and they want to interview us. And I really like doing that when we set up at the end of a format, and it's a chance for us to be grilled, if you like. I think it's really important and really completely 180ing the interview process, format and dynamics. Maybe it's a cop out, You'll tell me that, Tom, but I actually think
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite things to do. Instead of a question we'll ask, is actually just completely turn the tables on the process.
To be honest, I love that answer. I think we do much the same. And if anything, my role in the recruitment process, because I still try and meet everybody we hire,
Awesome.
is I see my role as basically trying to convince them not to join, which sounds like a stupidly exaggerated version of what you just said. But essentially, our last interview is exactly that. Let's flip this on its head. You ask us questions, you're interviewing us. And I want to get hard questions and I want to give bad answers is not the right word, but honest and transparent answers around this is what it means to sign up for this job. Because our view is we'd rather not waste your time if you're not right for us. And if you still want to work here, once you're fully clear on all the downsides, it's probably quite a good alignment, right? And so I think, yeah, no, it makes sense.
I think more in that market, I'm sure you've had this with other TA leaders as well, that kind of quest, if you like, for transparency for candidates is becoming more and more important. I think rightly so, they're holding employers to an even higher standard as they should. So I think anyone who's involved in that hiring process, being honest, being transparent about what it will be like in the role is even more important.
Couldn't agree with you more. We're going to spice up a bit, chuck a couple of wildcard questions in here as we go through some of the more industry focused stuff. So I think first one is, if you could have a work-related superpower, what would you choose and why?
Yeah, this is a fun wild card. Thanks to the marketing team at Pinpoint, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Do you know what? I'm going to end up thinking about this a long time and regretting my answer, I'm sure about it. The one I've got in my mind at the moment is effectively Bernard's Watch. Did you ever watch that show when you were younger? Just pause time.
Oh, yes, of course I did. Yeah, absolutely.
If I can effectively do that, everything's a quest for more time. If you can say I can still get the same amount of things done and I can then make sure I protect all the time, whether it's for friends and family at another working day, and you can guarantee me that, I will take that every time. I think there'll be that, maybe something around streamlining all the noise or notifications you get. We love Slack, but we also love Slack. So if there's a way that I could get that download or something that is translated into my brain, I'll take it.
I like the way you frame that. Yeah, you love Slack, but you love Slack. I like the way you articulate that. That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's move to metrics a bit. So we talk a lot about reporting. Like our view at Pinpoint is data, sounds so patronizing, but like data literacy, properly leveraging data across the TA function is something that's quite vividly missing in a lot of organizations we speak to on the ground, right? I think when we talk about metrics, people often default to the same things. I'm really interested in what do you think is that sort of single most important hiring metric that matters for you and why?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one for us. There's a kind of bigger metric. I know it's coming up a lot in the TA space, but for us, really what I'm trying to take the team and the organization towards is around that quality of hire for us, because it's an amalgamation of a few different things. So we're very tech driven, but we're fundamentally a consultancy organization. And so it's really important for us, particularly in anyone who's joining us in a kind of client facing projects type of role. Not only do we want to make sure that they're having a great experience and getting to work as quickly as that we've made that commitment to them, but that's an important thing for the business. If someone isn't able to join our projects within the first 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, then that's not a great experience for them. So for us, when we look at quality of hire, one of those first things actually is time to perform. How quickly can we get somebody up to speed where they feel that they are actively contributing and feel comfortable in the environment that we've onboarded them into? Massively important. Ideally, we want to be bringing people in where we're hiring for potential. So actually, what's their progression routes or what's their kind of upskilling journey, if you like? Are they actively doing that within the first 12 months in the organization? And then absolutely there's a case of, are they still with us in 12 months, right? Is that, to your point of being turning the tables, is the role and the organization what we told you it was going to be? Yeah. So for us, those are the things that we care about when we're starting to bring them together and we look at quality of hire. We have to care about them. We need to care about them more and focus on them more. That's the commercial view of what we need as a team.
No, I love that. And a lot of people default to quality of hire, but can't then follow up behind that with the detail and what that means to them and their business. And I think you've done that beautifully. And one of the latter things you said there was this idea of, did the experience that made tech actually reflect what we promised you through the recruitment process? And I think we personally are really fascinated by that too. Not because I feel like we're bad at managing expectations necessarily, but because I think sometimes what we say and how it's interpreted are not the same. And I think we've really actually tried to narrow down that stuff and go, hey, when we hired Oli and it didn't work out, why did it not work out? It did not work out because we didn't manage their expectations. And what could we have done to better manage that? Because we did say all the things that turned out to not work for Oli, but we didn't say them in a way that really landed and made sense and resonated with him and his perspective. And I think it's been a useful kind of feedback loop for us. And yeah, I hear you. I think that's a great answer.
Building on that, I would add as well, Tom, I would say, if we think about, you can't have a TA conversation without AI, I'm sure we're going to get to it. If we start to think about the types of skills or tasks that AI is going to support us with, but also start to take more responsibility for in that process, I think is then going to put more on us as wider kind of TA professionals and teams to then first be able to spend more time on exactly those things. So actually that candidate experience, the conversations, the actual what's it like here, we're always going to be able to do a much better job than AI on that. So that's where more emphasis on getting that stuff right is going to be placed on us. And I think rightly so, once more of that kind of technology can come in and help us streamline other parts of our screening process or whatever that might be.
No, that makes sense. So I think like a couple of pieces on this, and I'm going to jump to another wildcard question, and then we're going to wrap in this kind of thematic trend of AI, right? So wildcard question, if you had to go back in time and live in another era, when would you go back to and why?
I don't know if I've got great rationale for these kind of questions. There's always been something about that kind of Gatsby 1920s. I know it's such a cliche answer. I'm so sorry. That would be good for me. Otherwise, I suppose I'm interested in periods of time when there's just mass change. So maybe at the start of the Industrial Revolution, what was it actually like in the UK? That was really interesting to me. How do people navigate that? It feels like we're going into something similar in our own way. How are we going to adapt to that? What could we learn? And if I give you a third option, one of these will make the edit, Tom, will be I just came back from Berlin. And there was a whole thing there around when the wall came down, for example, and again, change, what that was like. I would have loved to have been around in there when that came down and just what happened to the city at that time. I think it's completely fascinating. So that would be my options, I think.
Were you in Berlin for fun or work or something else?
Just for fun, I went with my mum. So my grandma is German. So it was a kind of important time for us to go back there. And we just happened to be there on the 35th anniversary of the wall coming down as well. So there was some really poignant celebrations.
Very nice. Me and my wife's first ever holiday together was a weekend in Berlin at the Christmas market. So it's got a special place in my heart, that place. Okay, so back to the kind of core stuff, right? You alluded to this direction of travel towards AI. I think I'm interested in a couple of things there. So first and foremost, when we talk about TA teams and the folks that comprise those teams, what's the biggest skills gap you observe in TA folk today? And what should they be doing to address that?
Yeah, I was reflecting on this. I think if I'm going to try and speak more broadly, I think within TA and what's missing, I still think there's a big gap in that kind of commercial acumen, if you like. And I suppose what I mean by that is it's not always do people in TA really get how the commercial function of a business works. Yes, I think they do. But what I'm meaning really there is that kind of intelligence and being able to place and position TA in a kind of strategic and commercially important way, right? Sometimes there's a gap. You might have a lot of conversation with the TA at times, but they won't listen to me. They don't get what we're doing, and it's transactional. And I think some of that's going to be cultural, and sometimes that's a challenge with leaders. I totally get that, but I think there's too many organizations where there's some phenomenal insights and data and all these things that TA can bring in, and we need to find a way as a kind of broader kind of function and part of the business to bridge that gap. And I think one of the main reasons that we've still got it is that we aren't speaking the language of the business enough and really understanding what are the metrics they care about. When I mentioned earlier around that kind of time to perform, the consultancy, ultimately I should be getting this the other way around. Also, the business going, Oli, it's been 2 weeks longer than we needed to bring in this role. It's costing us reputation. It's costing us from a financial perspective, but vice versa. We should be able to put that back to business and say, we've brought in some fantastic people that have hit the ground running or given us these kind of business opportunities or whatever that might be. So for me, there's a gap there where we really need to be collectively starting to position that within our organizations and to our leaders.
Makes a lot of sense. And as you say, I think often the skills are there or the experience is there, but there's like a missing translation layer between that kind of commercially focused aspect of the business and TA. And we see like a big part, you talk about your mission, ours is maybe slightly less exciting and meaningful. But my view is I observed when I used to sit in engineering roles in other companies that TA just didn't have a seat at the leadership table and it wasn't driving strategic directions for businesses. That is a criminal mistake in most instances. And so we really see it as part of our role to help elevate TA as a function, give them the skills and also the kind of context and the language to take leadership in the rest of the business on that commercial journey. And so I couldn't agree with you more. We will touch on AI, right? What is your take on AI in this space and how do you think it's going to impact us in the near future?
We're at a point now where there's probably still a lot of teams that are maybe using it in small isolated cases or been worried about it for lots of really good reasons. But we have to look ourselves in the mirror and go, this has already arrived.
Yeah.
And if we aren't already doing something, there's a great kind of session I saw some of the team over at Arctic Shores and Hung Leaded as well. And I know there's a number of these happening at the moment where it's around the AI enabled candidate. So it's really compelling, interesting stuff to put together. And the AI enabled candidate is already here. So this isn't something now we can put into next year's budget or into the strategy and planning thing in 12 months' time. We have to start facing into this and responding sooner. If nothing else, we know that we're already on the back foot as TA, as a broad function, right? That candidates, whether it's in their CV creation, whether it's in actually during interviews, all those areas, we know AI is being used. And I think we've started to respond with it. And there's lots of really great stuff I know from Pinpoint as well around that, but we are still further behind compared to where the candidates are already. So if you haven't already got a stance, if you aren't starting to kind of mobilize your team with that, we have to do that. It's one of the things I've actually got a session this afternoon with our team about actually how do we put this together and what's our at least version 1 of that going to be within Maytech. We know it's already here. So that's the big thing for me. And I, to be honest, genuinely start to get quite excited about it. There's lots of things where if you're a TA professional, whatever your kind of role is, that are still pretty admin heavy, right? Whether you're within coordination and scheduling, there's a lot of admin and tasks to be done. Or if you're doing lots of screening calls, there's a lot of things that AI is going to, with the right attention, 100%, but it's going to really help you with your job. It's going to maybe, you can have to do less of that and you can quality check it, whatever it might be. So you can do the things that actually are far more impactful and in a lot of cases more enjoyable in your job. So I think we just have to lean into the positive take of it. There's lots of reasons why we wouldn't, but I think we've got to get on board and we've got to be positive about what we can do with it.
I love that. And to be honest, I think that's a great way to wrap us up. I think what I heard you say and what I loved, which was, I wouldn't call it a hot take, but it was beautifully framed, was actually you should not be thinking about how you're doing with AI in isolation, but think about it in the context of how far along that journey the candidate is. And I think, as you say, the candidate's already ahead of us in most of the time on these tools, and you need to be thinking about A, how you keep pace, but also B, all of the upside that these tools and this approach more generally can offer. I really like that. I will also echo your sentiment on Arctic Shores. I spoke next to Robert a couple of weeks back, and he talked about that AI-enabled candidate, articulated it beautifully. So thank you for that, Oli. This has been great. I think as we wrap up, really appreciate everything that you've done. Thank you for all of your commentary more broadly. It's been really great to hear. I think we'll put links to Oli's profile on LinkedIn so you can keep pace with him in the background. We'll link to Maytech, and hopefully we can follow up on some of the photography stuff you're doing on the side as well and make sure people can get some eyes on that.
That'd be great, Tom. It's been a pleasure to have a chat with you.
Brilliant. Oli, thanks for your time, and everybody else, thank you for listening to Talent Talks.